Introduce you guys to Delores Canon, an American hypnosist and self-published author of 17 non-fiction books, composed mainly of transcripts from the past life repression sessions. Keep in mind that Delores died sometime in 2014, way before all the hype about the Mandela effect, and she predicted exactly what is happening with our current reality.
This is what I found now about the new earth. You have to understand about dimensions. This goes along with these parallel lives and all of that. There are dimensions around us all the time. They're invisible to us, but they have peoples, they have cities, they are civilizations. They're all vibrating at different frequencies. That's why they're invisible to us. Just like a propeller or a fan blade, when it speeds up, the frequency increases, becomes invisible. These other dimensions are vibrating at a different frequency that makes them invisible. This is how the ETs travel back and forth. They change the vibration of the craft to disappear when they go into the other dimension. A lot of people will see them appearing and just vanishing. This is what's happening. They speed up the vibration of the craft and disappear. And I've worked with UFOs and I've done a lot of information about how they travel and all of that. But it has to do with dimensions that are around us all the time. We are constantly moving in and out of these dimensions without even knowing about it. We think this world, believe me, is not real. It is all vibrating at different frequencies anyway. One thing I want to say there, all of this is an illusion, they say. Nothing is real. It's only an illusion. I'm talking about dimensions, but I have wonderful emails about things that are happening in other dimensions that we don't realize. When you, have you ever had anybody tell you that they saw you somewhere and you were actually home? Because you were in and out of another dimension. And I've had some wonderful examples of that that have happened and that were proven when the person was at a conference and somebody said they came into the conference and they said, well, we just left you over here. One was the racetrack that started up. And they said, well, it was on Hot Springs when the race season started. And they said they were sitting with them at the racetrack. And here they walked into the conference and the person was there. Because they had made a decision, should I go to the racetrack or should I come to the conference? Well, they were actually in both places. And so it was proven in that case. But I've had wonderful stories like that. They said, one woman said she was in a hotel. She went down to the street, walked out on the street. Everything was like it was 50 years ago. The people, the cars, everything was like 50 years ago. And it scared her. Nobody seemed to be noticing her. But after a while, she got scared, and the only way she could get back, she had to go back in the hotel and go back up the elevator. In fact, she was, to get back into this reality. And one girl said she came out of the college dormitory and they were doing construction out in front of the dormitory. They had the tape up and the red cones and everything. They were tearing up the street. The next day when she comes out, there's no sign of any construction at all. Unless something happens to catch our eye and make us notice it, we don't realize we're constantly shifting in and out of dimensions. One man told me that he went out to the airport watching the jets take off. He saw the jet take off, then it went backwards, then it went forwards, then it went backwards before it finally took off. Then he saw another one do the same thing. Take off, go backwards, forwards. And then he watched the clouds in the sky, they were doing the same thing. Backwards and forwards. He goes out to the street, the cars are doing it, back and forth. And he wanted to know, well, what's happening here? The closest I could come to it was maybe he was at a juncture where the dimensions were not quite set. And he was kind of in that in-between part where they was all mixed up. But we've had sessions with people who've had strange experiences, and we've had them explain what these were. But one that I think was really amazing, but one I think was really important on the Art Bell show, I got an email from about these 3 women. Now, you know the Art Bell show goes on all night long, and you have to talk all night long. Some people don't want to stay up to listen to it, so they had these tape recorders that are very slow, and they turn those on so they can record the whole show, and then the next morning they play it back. Well, they said they were 3 women, were friends in Tennessee. They were recording the show. The next morning they got up, the one woman said, "The show wasn't on there, it was a sporting event." And she calls the radio station, and they said, "Oh, we're not carrying Art Bell anymore. We don't care how many people protest, we're not going to carry it." And her friend got the same thing. She got this sporting event. The 3rd woman got the show. On all 3 tapes, the same call letters were given of the station. They were all listening to the same radio station. 2 of them didn't get it, and 1 of them did. And then they said in there, they are carrying Art Bell again now. Now, what happened? Were they living over here in a dimension where it didn't exist, and this other one was over here where it was being broadcast? We tried to explain it, but a week or so after I got the email and I answered it, I was speaking at a Unity church in Memphis. These 3 women drove from Nashville, and they were older women, and they said, "We just wanted to come and tell you this really did happen, and we have the tapes to prove it." Now, isn't this an example of, I think, going in and out of dimensions? I don't know. I think that's what happened to PMH's ticket. She was trying to get here, and the airlines told her there is no such plane, no such flight. I think it existed in this other dimension. We're still going to track that out. But this is what I mean about dimensions. You're going to have to understand this before you're going to understand the part about the new earth. Because things are speeding up. Vibrations and frequencies are increasing because we are getting ready to move into the new earth. This earth has got to the point where we can't live here anymore.
Too low.
Too low, and also we're polluting the earth. We are overpopulating, but we're polluting, we're contaminating our foods. It's just getting to the point it can't not sustain life anymore. Now, one thing they told me was, you know, whenever we exploded the atomic bomb back in the late 40s and 50s, right after that time, suddenly there was this influx of UFOs activity. They said it was because we exploded the atomic bomb. And they leave us alone. You know, that's the law of free will and non-interference. They were leaving us alone. See, because UFOs are not what you think anyway. A lot of them are directly connected with all of this stuff that's going on with the source and with these messengers. It's more to it than you think. But anyway, they had to come and see, what are these kids up to down here? Because they saw that we were developing atomic power, and here we had these explosions going off. And they said, we can't allow this, because these kids are playing around with something they don't understand. But we got free will. What are we going to do about it? They also knew we were so into karma that we were going round and around and around. We weren't getting off of it. We were so bogged down. We were never going to be able to shift into the new dimension, because the new dimension requires our bodies to also shift with it. So anyway, what they said happened. When they saw what we were doing, they couldn't interfere. And not allowed to interfere from the outside. Otherwise, they just come down and say, hey guys, you can't do this, and they would have stopped us from doing it. You're going to destroy the world. You're going to, because if anything happens here, it ripples through the whole cosmos. It affects all the other planets. It can affect the whole dimension system. They cannot allow us to blow this planet up because it would cause too much wide-ranging effects. So this is why all of this is all intertwined. But they can't interfere in the workings of a civilization from the outside. So what they decided to do to help us, help ourselves to get out of this mess, they said we will work from the inside. And the call went out. Anybody wants to volunteer and come and help these kids? And that's what I'm getting now, because when I have people going back to the source, I'll say, well, what made you decide to leave? It was so beautiful. And they said, we heard the call, and we decided to volunteer. And many of them were coming in for the first time. And boy, they don't like it. And also the ETs, different life forms, they'll say, well, they asked us, do you want to go and help? So they had to change bodies. And they said, this body, I don't like it at all. But the way they're doing it, they were coming in as babies, working from the inside. The new vibration, the new frequency. Now what I'm getting is even stranger, that I'll be writing about in the new book. It was totally unexpected, because this is happening, we're going into it now. They can't take the time to come in as babies. They're coming in with two adults, but it's happening with permission when the person has a near-death experience. At that moment, they said, with the permission, if the soul wants to go on, they can enter the body and do their work. And they said they have 2 minutes is all they've got to make the exchange. I don't know if this sounds right to you, but this is what they said, that they're allowed to do it because they're here to help, and the other soul wanted to go on. It wasn't happy here. It's like a walk-in, except it's a different kind of a walk-in. That this is a different soul. In a walk-in, the person knows the soul that is going to do the exchange. In this case, it's not someone that they knew before, and they're allowed to come in. And sometimes even when a baby is born and it's not going to live, they can make the exchange at that time. But the idea is to get in here with fresh, new souls that are not bogged down in all of this karma, because they've got to change the world. We're not doing it. Now, I've found 3 waves of people that have come in. And this goes way back to the beginning of my work, and now I'm beginning to put it all together. The first wave are now, it's filled in the book, The Keepers of the Garden as an example, about, he's just turned 50. They're in their late 40s and just beginning to go 50, usually in the 40s. They are the ones who have had the most difficult time adjusting. I get so many letters from these people all over the world. They say, I don't want to be here, I don't like it here, I don't belong here, I want to go home, I don't know where home is. They got good lives, they've got good families, they've got good jobs, but they don't want to be here. Many times they try to commit suicide, as Phil did in that book. And it's because they don't want to be here. And after our book began to go all around the world, people began writing me and saying, I thought I was the only person in the world that felt that way. But now they're finding they're not alone. And now I'm getting this all the time. People are they will say, this is my first time on earth. I came as a volunteer and I don't want to be here. And I call these the first timers, but that's the first wave. They had the most difficult time of all because it was very hard to adjust to being here. You imagine, this is not a good place to be. We have all this violence. They don't understand violence. They don't want to be here. They don't like what we are doing to the earth. So that's the first wave. They had the hardest time adjusting. The second wave that I'm finding are those that are now in their 20s, 30s. They are having an easier time. And when I'm talking to them while they're under, they will say, this is also their first time on earth, but they will say, I'm an antenna. I'm a channel of energy. I'm an antenna. I'm here to receive energy and spread it out to the world at this time. They don't have to do anything else. And most of the time they live very simple lives. They don't have any problems. They're very easygoing. Sometimes they work out of their house. They don't even have to go out for a job. They will get married, but a lot of them won't have children because having children would create karma and tie them here. If we want to get in, do our job, and get out. We don't want to be stuck in this situation. Those are the second group. And they have an easier time because they were adapting easier. I asked them one time, why did the first group have such a hard time? They said because they were the pathfinders, the way showers. They had to blaze the trail for the other ones to follow as they came. And then the third wave are the new children. They're coming in with everything already in place, and it's not as difficult as the first ones that came in. And the DNA has been changed. Now, our DNA is being changed now because we have to be able to shift with this whole thing. They said if we hadn't changed your DNA, you would probably die by now. Either that or you would be very sick because of what they're doing to the food, what they're doing to the atmosphere. They have to help our bodies adapt to our environment and our surroundings. And they do this by helping with the DNA. They said the body is an amazing machine. It is amazing resilience to it. It can handle anything, absolutely anything in small doses. But too much, and the body can't handle it, and it would die. And that's why they have to make the body adapt, and we're constantly having this happen. The new children are coming in with all of this already in place. The DNA is there. Ours are being changed as the vibrations and the frequencies increase. The older people are having the most difficult time because their bodies are having to adjust, have a harder time adjusting to the frequency changes. Now, as we shift into this new dimension, that's what I wanted you to understand about dimensions. As we shift into the new dimension, the whole earth is changing. It's changing its frequency. It's changing its vibration. I have heard the tone of the earth. They have it on tape recordings that they broadcast from the space stations. The earth has a tone. That tone is changing. It is increasing. That's one sign that they know something is going on with the frequency of the earth. And they're noticing a lot of this. You know, when they had the tsunami, the earth did move. There's a lot of things happening with the earth. We have to shift and change vibration because it's got to get away from this, all this stuff. We are destroying the earth. And they said we can no longer be here. We have to go into the new earth. In order for us to move with the new earth, our bodies have to change. We have to change frequency and vibration. And I'm hoping I'm not going over too many people's heads, but I'm just throwing this out to think about it anyway. Our bodies have to change vibration and frequency. They cannot change suddenly because the body couldn't handle it, it would die. It would be too much of a jolt to the system. So over time, it started about 2 years ago, our bodies are gradually adapting and changing the frequency of our bodies. It gets to a little point and it'll level off, and then after a while it'll do it again. Each time it does it, you notice physical effects to the body. A lot of people go to doctors, the doctors can't find anything wrong with them because it is the body adjusting to these new frequencies. Some of the problems they say are, heart palpitations, high blood pressure, depression, joint pain, muscle pain. It's things like this as the body is adapting to the new frequency and vibration. Then some people feel it more than others, and then it'll level off, And after a few months or so, it'll do it again. And this is as we adapt to this. They said, if you were to examine the DNA in the body now, you would find a big difference. They said the doctors are going off of the old information, what they've been taught in school. Our cells are receiving new information constantly as we adapt to this. They don't understand that. So when they try to help you, it's not working because they don't understand what's really happening to the body. And a lot of people said are not allowed to get sick because they don't want them probing around in their bodies. But anyway, this is what's happening as we are adapting, and it's gradually moving. It can't happen suddenly, but the earth is moving into this new frequency. The tsunamis, the earthquakes, the storms, all of this is the earth as it's making these adaptations. And it wants to get rid of us, really. It's tired of us. They say it's like a dog trying to shake the fleas off because of what we've been doing to the earth. And it really wants us out of the picture. Now, the ones who are going to move into the new earth is going to be something you won't believe. It is so beautiful and wonderful. Now remember, this information comes from many, many people that I've worked with, and I just put it together like a puzzle. The new earth is extremely beautiful. In the Bible, it's described as the 1,000 years of peace, when everything is perfect. You know, in the book of Revelation, when it talks about the new heaven and the new earth, and some will be left and some will be taken, this is what it's talking about. It's shifting into the new earth. Now, those who will move to live on the new earth are those whose vibrations are being allowed to shift with it. Those who can't change will stay with the old earth and all of the horror that's going to be happening on the old earth. And they said, you want to move and don't look back, because they said this is something you don't want to see, that it's going to be very, very bad. They said, some will be left behind. And I said, that sounds cruel. And they said, not really, it's their own decision. Everybody has to make their own decision. Do you want to stay with what you have created, or do you want to move into this new earth that's being prepared? But they said, you must make the decision, because you can't shift your vibration that quickly. You have to make the decision, are you going to go or are you going to stay? And that's what they mean by being left behind. And those who are very much into karma will not be able to move, because they still have to, these are laws, they have to pay this off. And they're not going to be allowed to move into the new earth until they get rid of the old karma. Those people will stay with the old earth. Then when they die, they will be sent to another place, another planet that still has negative karma, so they can repay it there. They will not be allowed to come back to the new earth because it will have changed too much. There was no place for those kind of people. It does sound cruel, but they said it's their own decision, they're making up their own mind, and they will stay in the reality they have created. I was telling about this at an ashram in the Bahamas a few months ago, and this one woman said, but I'd want to stay and help them, the ones that are left behind. I said, you don't want to move on? She said, no, somebody's going to have to help them. But they said they have done this themselves. And they said, even if you wanted to stay, once the shift is completed and the vibrations are complete, you can't. You will move with it. You won't be able to stay with the others. And you know, even the Bible, it says 2 workers working in the field, one will be taken and one will be left. 2 people sleeping together, one will be taken and one will be left. That's what they mean. Some will stay and some will move on. And I've gone over and over this so much. I had some about it in Convoluted 2. And I'm getting more about it now as I'm trying to understand all these parts to this. They said, we can't fully explain it because we don't know what's going to happen. It's never happened before in the history of a planet that an entire planet has moved at one time.